very much, Dawn, again, for agreeing to do this podcast with me. As I mentioned earlier, and the reason why we want to do this podcast is basically to demystify, to raise awareness, to educate the public about what STEM is all about, to show the diverse roles that we currently have within the engineering world, how it's evolving all the time, how STEM impacts our world today, our society, because it does make such an amazing impact, a positive one, but sometimes the public are not able to see how that happens. And one of the things that I want to be able to do with this podcast is to be able to showcase that and see how we are doing that. So, for example, bringing the back end, so people who are creating, producing these products or services or processes, and how it marries with people who are using it, so the front end users who are using it, but also a combination of showcasing people who are of different diverse roles, people of different caliber, diversities, including disabled people as well. So how they're using and what they actually work behind the scenes as well. So what I want to do is raise that profile and show how it can be accessible, how we want to make it more inclusive and more diverse as well. So hence the reason for this podcast. So basically, I'm a positive disruptor. Start a conversation, change the world in a positive way. That's what I want to do. So I want to say thank you so much for coming on board, and also to congratulate you on your accolade, OBE. Wow, that's impressive. You deserve it because you worked truly hard for that. Well, no, not you, but you've shown what you can do. You're passionate about what you do, and this is amazing as well. And also that you, as a person who's been an apprentice, and how you've developed over the years. So I do want you to be able to show yourself as who you are and how you started as well. So if that's okay, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, we've discussed before. I started out in engineering as an apprentice. Got to 16, trying to decide what to do post O-levels. Came from a family where parents didn't want to pay for me to do or stay on in education because it meant finances would be low. So my mum sort of said, well, go out and get a job. So what do you do at 16 when your parents say go out and get a job? The only option at the time was an apprenticeship. So my dad was an electrical and electronic engineer, really enjoyed talking to him about what he was doing, found an apprenticeship, I loved it. And it gave me that experience, that background, that knowledge to go on and do the things that I've done throughout my career. So my apprenticeship was 4 to 5 years in duration, lots of mix of different things. It was primarily electrical and electronic, but I worked for an organisation that designed engine test equipment for the aero, marine and automotive sectors. So it was quite diverse in terms of the skills, knowledge and behaviours that you'd adopt. Went on and did many things as you do, as your career develops. Got involved with the Women's Engineering Society, the IET, did lots for the Women's Engineering Society, and that gave me that sense of having a voice. So being able to go out there and speak about apprenticeships and what apprenticeships can offer people, because apprenticeships have changed over the period of time since I did mine. We now have what are known as occupational standards, and the apprenticeship today delivers against that national occupational standard. In engineering, engineering and manufacturing, we've got about 145 that have been published at anything from level 2, which is equivalent to GCSE, up to level 7, which is your postgraduate MSc. So there is a variety of ranges, and I believe that there are still more in development. So in the sort of like, they're in the process of being rolled out. So I think they're looking at another 33 at least. So that will give us a huge array of occupations that engineering and manufacture encompass. And it's looking at new technologies. So, everything that's on that green agenda is going to be available for young people to go into an engineering via that green route. And we need that. you know, we hear daily that we're not going to have the charging stations available for all the electric vehicles that we're going to be having to use, so that we're reducing the emissions from the internal combustion engine. And that's just an example. You know, we're advancing technology all the time. My present job is in FE, so I'm actually working with apprentices and employers to bring on that new talent, so at 16, and take them through that journey. Or more recently, we're working with organisations and employers that are looking to upskill their workforce. So these might be people that are in the workforce, have been there for a while, doing their job as production operators, but the technology that they're using is changing. It's, you know, they're moving away from that manual operation to automated machinery, so robot control. But somebody's got to be able to program those robots to know what they're doing. If they break down, they've got to know how to maintain them. So organisations want to upskill and give their workforce those skills, that knowledge, to be able to do that. So there's a lot of work going on now with apprenticeships and around that upskilling. So it's a really, really exciting place to be, I think.
Well, that's great. Can you just expand on, when you say apprenticeship, what does that entail? What does that mean to, if you're going to talk to a Joe Blog on the streets, the public, so they're aware of what it entails and how long, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they vary, and this is the challenge for employers and for people wanting to do an apprenticeship. So typically a level 2, so something that's equivalent to a GCSE, is anything between 12 and 18 months. A level 3, so that's equivalent to A levels, can be anything up to 3 years, maybe 3.5, 4 years, dependent. And what an apprenticeship is today is you look at the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are required for an occupation. So, for instance, you could be an engineering technician, but what would that involve? So, and there are a number of pathways within that, but there are some core knowledge, some core skills and some core behaviours that are mapped against the professional registration requirements for engineering technicians. So for most of us in engineering, we do register professionally at EngTech, iEng or CEng, and EngTech is where that level 3 is based. So on completion of a level 3 apprenticeship, most apprentices will be able to register, or they should be able to register professionally at EngTech. So there are some sort of core knowledge, skills and behaviours that an individual is required to exhibit. That knowledge, it's about what they know and understand in relation to the job that they're doing. So it's the foundation of those engineering principles that they will use if they were then going to go on to university. So it will be basic engineering maths, electrical and electronic principles, mechanical principles, and a number of other units that they might take as part of a technical certificate. And for some occupational standards or for some apprenticeships, that's required within that standard. Whereas others, they may not have any qualifications in them at all. The qualification itself nowadays is the apprenticeship, because of those core knowledge, skills and behaviours. So nowadays, at the end of any apprenticeship, whatever it might be, whether it's at level 2 or level 7, an apprentice will have to independently sit an assessment, or a range of assessments, and those will be marked and assessed by somebody that hasn't been involved in that training. The bit I was adding is that for an apprenticeship today, they have to do an independent assessment at the end. So, you know, so it's not an easy route for anybody that thinks an apprenticeship is easy. They are, you know, they couldn't be more misinformed, because there's a lot of work that an individual has to do to demonstrate competence, really, and to demonstrate that underpinning knowledge and understanding.
Indeed. So with the apprenticeship, it's a combination of hands-on as well as written, because that's one of the things I wanted to sort of bring out as to show what does it entail. Is it you know, even though you're aiming to do a certain role, does it cover just more of an overview, or is it very focused as to what you're going to get out of it?
It's that combination of hands-on and academic. So you've got that, you know, you've got that. It's ideal for anybody that wants to put into practice what they're learning. Okay. So, you know, you for instance, a lot of the apprenticeships that I work, or the apprentices that I work, and the apprenticeship standards that I work with, most apprentices have 1 or 2 or 3 days in college. It will depend what they're doing. So they will get that theory behind what they're doing. They will then go away and execute that in the workplace. And it's about understanding what they're doing in the workplace and how that please. I think we're back.
This is going to be an interesting one. I'm not really sure what's going on. I don't know why it keeps freezing.
But that's what makes it so organic.
Very true. I apologize. I think he likes you, that's why. So it keeps freezing just to sort of set you in motion. Sorry. Anyway, let's continue before it freezes again. But okay. So
but yes, so they get that combination of the hands-on experiential learning and doing, and that academic theory behind it.
So they have to be affiliated with a company for them to be able to go onto this, onto the course itself. Okay. Yeah.
So an organisation will employ an apprentice, and then so they have to be employed to be an apprentice.
So they get paid as well at the same time.
So they get paid, and that's the benefit, and that's why I did an apprenticeship, because you got paid to learn.
Right.
So it's that earning while you're learning. So it meant that my parents didn't have to fund my studies effectively. So I was funding it. I wasn't funding it myself, but an employer was funding it. So and that's the mechanism today. So an employer effectively pays for your training, your development, and your growth as an engineer.
That's good. So based on your experience, because you've been in the industry for, as you said, over 34 years now, what are the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the issues that you think, and then yes, that are out there and we're not, has to be fixed somehow? Go on.
Yeah, I mean, the good is that there, you know, the opportunities for young people and people that want to change career with apprenticeships now are vast. That is just huge. You know, I see day to day apprentices who are not just 16 or 18-year-olds, you know, they are a lot older. So they're changing career. They're coming in to do something that they've thought about, but they've not really explored in more detail. They've got the opportunity to do that now. The bad is that sometimes an apprenticeship is not right for some people. So we do see people dropping out. It would be good if they didn't, they actually stayed the course, but I think we see that in society anyway. The other bad is that we still don't have the numbers of young women coming in to engineering apprenticeships, so those numbers are still quite low. You know, the wider diversity issue is better than it has been. So we know we need to encourage more Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups into apprenticeships. They're still very white male. And the ugly, I suppose, is it ugly that a lot of people don't understand the expectations? So, you know, they don't realise the amount of work that they have to put in. So you see a lot of, I suppose, one-to-one tuition, guidance and support having to come into play because people haven't anticipated what is required of them and their organisations throughout that journey. So other than that, I'd say actually there's more good than bad, there's more good than ugly, but we've still got a long way to go, especially for the diversity issues.
Okay, so because you mentioned that there are two areas, so that diversity as well as young women not taking uptake.
Yeah.
What's the reasons behind that? Or what are the reasons behind that?
From my own experience, it's that apprenticeships are not given the same space in schools that university applications are given. So there is a focus on getting young people into university, but not necessarily looking at the opportunities that an apprenticeship might offer. So, and I think there's a lack of understanding about the variety and the diversity of apprenticeships that are on offer, because somebody could leave school with A levels and go on to a level 4 apprenticeship, which would mean that they would have the equivalent of a higher national certificate or a higher national diploma, and they would have those so they would have those higher thinking level skills as well, and be able to apply those in the workplace. So I think there's a lack of understanding within the education sector, and possibly from parents as well. They don't appreciate what's involved for young people going through an apprenticeship, whatever that might be, at whatever level. So there is that education piece that needs to take place.
Okay, so that's quite a key thing, because if you don't fix that, then the world's going to be going through that cycle all over again. Another thing you raised as well is that the people who drop out, the expectation of the nature of how much work they have to do. Is that more with the educational side of it, the theoretical side, or is it the practical hands-on?
I think it's a combination. So some are not ready for that level of academic study.
Okay.
And they find it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Others find it difficult to combine the two. So actually be able to work and study at the same time. And I suppose we all know that it's right for some and not right for others, but it's about finding what's right for you. And yeah, for some they find it's too much work, because you have to be able to, I suppose, develop those thinking skills that will enable you to take what you've learned academically and apply it in the workplace. And some of them find it too difficult to manage the two. So yeah, if we could fix that, we would have more apprentices coming through. And also, you know, there are some people that come into engineering and engineering's not right for them, so they drop out because of that as well.
What's the percentage of that? Do you know roughly?
I don't know nationally, actually. It's not something that I've been able to get a handle on. Within the college network that I'm in, the percentages are quite small, so it's only about 1 or 2%.
Okay,
so it's not huge. But actually, if you're one apprentice in one organisation, that's massive.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so
yes.
that can have.
It's all relative, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So if an organisation is taking on 30 or 40 apprentices and only one drops out, that's not a major issue. But if you're an SME, you've invested in an apprenticeship placement, and that apprentice drops out, that is huge. So yeah, it's scalability, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. What with apprenticeship itself and in the way it works, and you mentioned about education. How do we get the education system to change? Because really, for it to be successful, you've got to be aware of the benefits and how the system, because the school itself, we struggle with that, because we still believe one way, and sometimes the people who are behind the scenes advisor or the student advisors, they don't know much about STEM or how it works and the benefits of different ways of the trade school or, as you said, apprenticeship. So how do we get the education system, the education or the people behind the scenes to think out of the box? Because it really, you have to think out of the box. There isn't just one way. So how do we do it from your perspective?
I think if we had the answer to that, we'd have solved all the problems, wouldn't we? And it seems to be an age-old a challenge. But I think it's people like you and I knocking on the doors constantly all the time, trying to break down those barriers in the school networks. It's through people that we know, talking to other parents, our friends, relatives, and just spreading the word that way in the first instance. I mean, that schools are supposed to invite further education establishments in to talk about careers and opportunities now. But what I can't do is get a handle on how successful that is becoming. Okay. You know, schools have an obligation to invite their local FE colleges in, employers in, as part of that careers messaging process. But we're still struggling. So okay. That, you know, there are still some schools that we can't get into. I know from my own experience working with the Bloodhound SSC project, and on the education side of that, getting into schools and doing activities is one thing, but getting into schools and talking about the opportunities from those activities is something entirely different. So yeah, what could we do differently? It's a very difficult one to answer, because we both know we've been actively engaged in doing that for some time. Yeah. And I think it's just that constant drip feeding. You know, it's about, we'll tell one person, that one person will tell two people, and hopefully you'll get a snowball effect. But you know, I've been doing this for 34 years and the numbers are still the same. Mm. So we need, you know, I think the government were looking at wanting to expand the number of apprenticeships or people going into apprenticeships. And I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was about 3 million. We haven't achieved that at all in any way, shape or form. So there is some work still to be done. Do you think how we do it, I don't know. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you think, because there's two things, but the first thing, do you think that maybe there's a way for us to introduce apprenticeship into the school system, into school curriculum? Or is that already happening?
It's interesting that you should say that, because I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I believe there was a scheme, and I mean, this is me racking my brains, that there was something to do with 14 to 16-year-olds, like a diploma that they could do, that was almost like a traineeship to get them on that pathway. And that went by, you know, by the wayside some years ago.
Okay.
Oh, probably, we've lost 2 years. Everything's
changed. I know everything seems to be like, yeah.
Time scales have gone out the window. I'm not, do you know, I can't quite remember. I think it was sometime in the 90s, early 2000s.
It's a long time ago.
I would have to dredge the memory banks. Yeah. But again, you know, the UTCs, the University Technical Colleges, were introduced as that sort of mechanism to encourage young people into those technical routes. And we have the T levels that are coming out.
The T levels
some of them have started. So T levels are technical levels. Okay. So they will sit alongside A levels.
Okay.
And again, there's not been a great deal of publicity about those. So those will be the technical equivalent to an A level. So rather than doing that academic route, you will do a technical route, so it will still have the same academic equivalence, but you'll get work experience embedded into it alongside it, and it will be there are engineering focused T levels coming out.
And you know, we do need that, because if you look at the children, some of the young people leaving school without any education, they're not interested in really studying. So we need to have some form of a change in the curriculum and how we project and how we, it's not, and also the assessment as well, something I think is too long. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think we need to change the way we do things, because I think it's not working. If it's not working, then we need to find a different way of doing it, because we can't keep repeating the same old things and still getting the same results, which is not really the results we want. So how do we, I mean, as you're an educator, so I need you to tell me how we're going to do this.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because apprenticeships today, you know, at the end of the apprenticeship, all apprentices have to undergo this endpoint assessment. And there are very, very different assessment methods for the different standards that are on offer. So I was talking to an employer this morning, and a particular standard that they are looking at, the assessment method is a case study report. So the apprentice will do a project in the workplace. They will then have to write a report based on that work that they are doing. That will be submitted for assessment, and there'll be some questioning and answering around that project report. So like a Viva that you would have to explain your thesis, just to that extent. They would also have to do a presentation about work that they have done and their best pieces of work. But alongside of that, the sort of like the journey that they are on in terms of gathering the evidence against their knowledge, skills and behaviours, they build up a portfolio of evidence. So that will be presented to an endpoint assessor to be assessed, and they will have a discussion or professional discussion with the apprentice on completion and try and tease out those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So, you know, you might have done this piece of work, so really tell me what you do, how you do it and why you do it the way you do it. And if they start talking, they'll interrogate that a little bit further. So those are different assessment methods. It's not sitting down in a room doing an exam, and that is going to suit some people.
Yeah, but you know, young people are they want it now, and they're not patient enough to sit down and then do the work. And my concern is that if you're trying to encourage people to come and do something, but you're also limiting them, then you've lost a battle, because they're enthusiastic up to a point, but when you feel weighed down, as you're saying, that not everyone, because everyone has a different way of learning and everyone has a different way of approaching things, and we've got to be aware of that. And how then do we do it? Because the reason I'm asking this, because I think we are struggling with our education system. We're still very traditional. We're very traditional. I think we need to mix it up a bit and see what works. The German system works well. I don't know if, because they do some, but how do they, because they're very effective. Okay, maybe I'm being I don't know.
And it's because they have those two strands. So you can either go down the, I only know the technical route because I used to work for an Austrian company, so they have a similar basis. So at 14 they go down that technical route. That's the route that they choose. And that's, I suppose, where the UTCs come in. So it was adopting that idea. And unfortunately, you know, some of the UTCs have fallen by the wayside because there wasn't that level of interest, I suppose, because they're drawing that pool of talent away from the, you know, our typical school system. They would be going into the UTC. So for the schools, it's about funding, I think, really. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's about it's about money. Well, at the reality, end of the day, isn't it? It's always
we
about
need to
money.
face it. It is, but that is so true. But you know, but we have to change. The system is not working. It doesn't matter how we paint it. Doesn't matter how we sugarcoat it. It's not working.
Yeah,
and yes. Sorry, go on.
I mean, I was going to say, interestingly, you know, again, harking back to sort of like Bloodhound SSC days, we were talking to some Turkish schools about the way in which they work, and they work on a very the schools that we were talking to worked on a very project orientated approach. So effectively the projects drove the curriculum. So they would have a theme or an idea or a concept, and then all of the teaching and learning would be developed around that idea, that concept. So if they were looking at maybe launching a spacecraft into space, what might that learning look like for that individual to understand how you would get a shuttle from the ground up into space and back down again? So all the teaching and the education and the learning and the development would be project orientated around that idea. And I thought that is quite an interesting approach to take. I don't know how they would assess it, but I think it was quite an interesting and novel approach to take.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's something we need to think about. And I think what I would love to do is have a panel. So you're going to be on that. We have a panel. No, because I think we have to open the discussion, because the system is not working. We've got so many young people leaving school with no qualification, and the standard is so below, so they're already concerned about what they don't have, that even for you to bring them into that world of apprenticeship or whatever it is, trade.
I mean, there are some organisations looking at a pre-apprenticeship training programme. So they're looking at traineeships, which are fairly new. So individuals coming out, or young people coming out of school, could start on a traineeship, which would be a lot more hands-on. There would be some academic learning, obviously, but it'd be a little bit more vocational, and then that might be a way in for them as well. And so on completion of that traineeship, they could then go on to an apprenticeship, or they would be work ready. So, you know, if engineering is not for them, they could go off and do something else. But those skills actually that they learn on a traineeship are transferable. You know, we all know that engineers can go anywhere and do anything, actually.
Exactly. They're employed everywhere. Tell you about it. That's so true. And thank you so much. But I think also the media has a role to play, don't they? So how do we get the media? Because again, we don't have the, no, that's not correct. Sometimes the type of people that are telling our story do not know our story, if that makes sense. So we need to change that, but we need the media to get involved. And I think with what the apprenticeship and what you're doing is so important. We need to raise that awareness, because the Joe blog on the people outside are not aware of what you do, or what it entails. And it's a reason educating them, because if they have information that enables them to make informed decisions, it makes it easier. It makes it easier on the parent, it makes it easier on the young person. So they're not going in and think, oh, it's going to be sailing through, but they know there's going to be working for, there's going to be certain things, but also they know what the different options that are available to them. So, you know, I'm so grateful, because I've learned so much. I need to come back but I need a panel with different people. So someone like yourselves with your expertise, and someone in the education system, how it works, and just talk about it. Let's break it down and do something that will benefit. Because one of the things we are struggling with, and what we're saying in the UK, is that we've got a skills shortage. If the young people are coming out without an education, or they don't know what then how are you going to get the people in? You can't.
Exactly.
And then we're complaining that we're getting other people from ourselves, from other parts of the world, to come and do the work, whereas we're not fixing the problem inside. So we are very reactive rather than being proactive. And I want to change that. That's the reason why I do this podcast. I want to change people's perception. So I'm a positive disruptor. Change how we think about our world. That's my aim. So
I think it's fantastic just to have a platform to be able to speak about it, really. You know, you're giving us a voice, which is what we've not had before.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Oh, so it's beneficial.
Definitely.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really need that. So based on all our conversation, I know we can talk in air forever, but I think we also need to make it tight so that people who hear you can see what you're saying, but also don't want it to be so long that they get tired, but not because it's boring, but because we want them to hear and we want them to do something about it. So what would you say is your what would be 5 things that you would love to see, practical, sustainable solutions that will help us? Because, you know, with this pandemic, everyone started being reactive rather than being proactive. So how can we prepare ourselves to deal with the challenges we are facing? So skill shortage, from your from apprentice perspective, because that's your expertise. I want you to bring, and so 5 things, and climate change. So the things that we can do to change how we do things and make it better for us in this nation, because we're complaining. We've complained so long that, you know, we're wearing a t-shirt already. So let's change that and bring some practical solutions. So I let you tell me 5 practical solutions.
5 practical solutions to I suppose increasing the number of apprenticeships. and this is going to sound really way out there.
Please, that's what we want.
We actually need more engineers going into politics to make a change.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because I think that would be a really key, that would make a real difference. We actually need engineers going into the media to get the message out there, to communicate what we do, how we do it, and why we do it the way we do it. They're probably quite radical ideas, really.
No, they're wonderful ideas. This is what we want. We want to change people, think out of the box.
And I want schools to open up and encourage apprentices. So their past students to go in and talk to them about apprenticeships, because they will all have one or two. You can guarantee that every school in the country will know one or two that have gone on to do an apprenticeship in some form or other. Get them in, speak to them, get them to talk to young people about what they've done, how they've done it, and where it's led them to. Because it's not just about young people going back into the classroom, it's about people my age, going back to explain where their career journey has taken them. The other two, we need to address, like you said, the skills shortage. Engineers can go on and do amazing things. We don't have to stay in engineering. We can have this portfolio career, and engineering is a fantastic place to start to enable people to do that. And then the fifth one, it's us as family members. Let's go out and talk to our own families, the younger generation in our families, about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it the way we do it. And I think that we tend to be reluctant to do that because we don't want to be seen to be boring them, but actually let's do it. Let's be proud of who we are and what we do. Indeed. Really.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah.
Well, seriously, that's amazing. I love this is why I do what I do. And I love people, because we have to break the myth. How do we do that? We have to change how we do things. We have to think out of the box, and we've got to raise that awareness and how we do it. And we've got to get the education system, we've got the government, we've got to have businesses thinking differently, and also get the media to report in the right way, or how, as you say, the right people talking about what we do, how we do, why we do what we do, and showcase us as who we are. We're, but also have familiar role models as well, people who look like us, people who've been through there, not just young people, people who've achieved many great things, but also people who've just started off, the middle ground, those, whatever they are. And if we can do that, it means that we're changing. And that's what I want to do, because I think what we do very well is complain a lot. So I want to change that and say, this is what we do. We change things a lot in a better way, in a positive way. So I'm so grateful, Dawn. I really am. Seriously, I really hope it was a platform that you thought was worthwhile for you, because I've really enjoyed it, and it's good to catch up as well. I really enjoyed it. Seriously, I enjoyed listening to you, and because there was so much about apprenticeship that I didn't know, and I wasn't even aware that you were an apprentice before until of course I read something about you, but I wanted to get it from you as well. But it shows that, look, you're the living example of what is real, or what is possible. Even though you went into education, became a project management, but it's still showcased. And look at you, an OBE, people show, because please, what you have done is your passion has come through, and people have seen that, and it's rewarding for what you have achieved, what you have done, and that to me is wonderful. So I thank you so much. So I really would love to when I get other people, because I need people who are educators to come on board as well, because the system is not working. We need to find a way to change it, and I think you made some good points and recommendations, which I think would get them to think. Because there are young people coming in now, there are people from different diverse backgrounds coming in now. So I think the change can happen, but unless we sit down together and talk about it, you can't go away and then talk to everybody else about it, unless it's brought to your attention. And that's what I want to do. So thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm so sorry about the techie
Oh, that's
problem,
okay.
but that's why
That's
why it's
engineering
our
in
world.
action, isn't it?
That's our world. And thank you for your patience. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. So